Marriage proposal to a male president. 30 insane things Idi Amin did. Introduction. Idi Amin Dada, Uganda's self-proclaimed conqueror of the British Empire, was not just a dictator, he was a performance. From 1971 to 1979, he ruled like a man caught between a battlefield and a comedy stage. His reign was soaked in blood, yet dressed in absurdity. Every day under his watch felt like a twisted theater show. Soldiers became clowns, ministers became disposable toys, and citizens lived in a nightmare scripted by a dark comedian. These stories are not myths. They are the insane truths of one of history's strangest tyrants. Let's dive into 30 moments that prove Idi Amin's Uganda was madness in motion. Number 1. He ordered soldiers to march backwards Kampala. A scorching afternoon, soldiers stood in perfect formation, boots polished, rifles gleaming. Foreign dignitaries looked on, expecting military precision. Then Amin's booming voice cracked the air. March backwards! The parade dissolved into chaos. Boots scraped gravel. Thud, scrape, thud. Soldiers stumbled, rifles wobbled, sweat dripped. Dignitaries bit their lips, trying not to laugh. Amin, however, beamed like a proud inventor. To him, it was genius. To his soldiers, humiliation under the shadow of death. To the world, Uganda's army had become a circus act. Number 2. He launched a concrete boat on the shores of Lake Victoria. Amin unveiled his engineering miracle, a boat made entirely of concrete. Cameras flashed, a brass band played, crowds gathered. With a mighty shove, the cement monster slid into the lake, whoosh, then immediately sank with a thunderous splash. Gasps, screams. Engineers turned pale, bracing for execution. But Amin clapped his hands, roaring with laughter. Play louder, he ordered the band. Soldiers cheered nervously, their voices trembling. Uganda had just created the only boat in history that drowned itself on launch day. Number 3. He staged a fake war at an AU summit. The African Union summit in Kampala was supposed to be about diplomacy. Instead, Amin turned it into a war zone. Tanks rolled in. Vroom! Helicopters shredded the sky. Whoop, whoop! Explosions rattled the ground. Boom, boom! Delegates screamed, diving under tables. Leaders like Yasser Arafat and Daniel Arap Moi thought real war had erupted. Then Amin appeared, laughing like a conductor of chaos. Uganda is the mightiest nation in Africa, he boasted. The room filled with forced smiles, but behind those faces was the shared thought: the host was insane. Number 4. He ordered the killing of his photographer. Amin wanted to look heroic, so he posed for a swimming photo. But when the picture leaked abroad, Western tabloids mocked him, claiming he looked like he was drowning. Enraged, Amin summoned his personal photographer, the man who leaked the image. In a rage, he ordered his execution. Soldiers moved to carry it out. But in a twist of fate, the photographer escaped, fleeing Uganda before the order could be carried out. It was a chilling reminder. In Amin's Uganda, one wrong picture could mean death. Hap number 5. He turned state trips into family holidays. Foreign trips weren't about diplomacy for Amin. They were family vacations. Planes overflowed with wives, children, cousins, and endless luggage. Ambassadors scrambled, hotels were swamped, and state visits looked more like carnivals. While diplomats waited in stiff suits, Amin strolled through shops with his kids. To him, Uganda's treasury was his wallet. To the outside world, it was humiliation. Number 6. He lived in the swimming pool paperwork? Boring. Amin made the Nile Hotel swimming pool his true office. Splash, his massive frame hit the water daily. He forced ministers and soldiers into swimming races, but with a cruel twist, they could only use their hands while he swam freely. Naturally, he always won. Applause thundered poolside, but it wasn't joy, it was fear. Who dared beat the president in his watery kingdom? Had number 7. He became a global joke. Despite Amin's desire for glory, that infamous swimming photo turned him into an international joke. The conqueror of the British Empire mocked in cartoons, tabloids, and late-night comedy. Ugandans dared not laugh, but the dictator's pride was wounded. For a man who demanded fear, ridicule was a poison that cut deeper than bullets. And number 8. He sent the national team shopping. In 1978, Uganda's national football team, the Cranes, played Tanzania and actually won. Spirits were high. But instead of more training or matches, Amin had a bizarre command. Go to Libya and go shopping. Yes, an entire national team sent abroad with shopping bags. To Amin, it was generosity. To the players, confusion. To the world, another absurd headline from Uganda's living theater of madness. Number 9. He tortured a former minister himself. Amin's cruelty wasn't always passed to others. Sometimes he took pleasure in it directly. Ojera, a former minister under Obote, was captured. Instead of handing him to soldiers, Amin personally tortured him. Witnesses whispered of punches, whips, and screams. This wasn't political showmanship. This was raw brutality. The laughing, swimming, joking Amin stripped away, revealing the true monster beneath. Hack number 10. He gave his 6-year-old son a national medal. The Medal of Bwala, Uganda's highest honor, reserved for heroes of sacrifice, ended up pinned on Amin's 6-year-old son. Cameras flashed. Ministers clapped stiffly. The child, confused, played with the medal like a toy. What symbolized blood and sacrifice had been reduced to a family trinket. Number 11. He mocked freedom of speech. Uganda has freedom of speech, Amin declared with a sly grin. Then the twist, but I cannot guarantee freedom after speech. Crowds laughed nervously. Everyone knew it wasn't a joke. Critics disappeared. Markets buzzed with whispers under fear of spies. It was the cruelest punchline of all time. Number 12. He proposed marriage to Julius Nyerere. In one of the strangest moves in diplomatic history, Amin actually sent a telegram to Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere proposing marriage. For Amin, it was part insult, part provocation. For Nyerere, it was pure humiliation. Furious, he took it as the final straw. The bizarre marriage proposal helped ignite the Uganda-Tanzania war, which would eventually topple Amin's regime. Number 13. He ate 40 oranges a night. Even in exile, Amin lived in eccentricity. He bragged that he ate 40 oranges before bed every night to keep his strength. When a journalist mocked the claim, Amin exploded in fury. Madness wasn't just in his rule, it was in his diet, his obsessions, and his delusions. Number 14. He banned wigs and flip-flops. Fashion was politics for Amin. He banned wigs for women and flip-flops for men. Markets panicked, shops closed, women burned wigs in secret. Soldiers patrolled streets, checking shoes. To Amin, it was control disguised as morality. To citizens, it was humiliation hidden as law. Number 15. He challenged presidents to a boxing match. Amin, once a heavyweight boxer, often claimed he was the strongest leader in the world. If any president disagreed, he dared them to fight him in the ring. He even fantasized about boxing Muhammad Ali. To Amin, politics was combat. To the world, it was delusion, the fantasy of a man who thought fists could solve diplomacy. Here we go. Number 16. Sent love letter to the Queen of England. Idi Amin shocked the world when he sent a love letter to Queen Elizabeth II, declaring his desire to marry her. In the outrageous letter, he promised her endless gifts, cows, elephants, and loyalty from Uganda. He presented himself as the only man fit to stand beside her. To Amin, it was half mockery, half arrogance, a way to insult the very monarchy he claimed he had defeated. British diplomats were horrified and dismissed it as lunacy, but Amin treated it like a serious proposal. He paraded the letter publicly, claiming even the Queen admired him. For Ugandans, it was another spectacle that turned their nation into a global joke. For Amin, however, it was a performance of dominance, an attempt to rewrite history by presenting himself as equal or even superior to the most powerful monarch of his time. Number 17. Ordered foreign diplomats to play basketball. Amin's hunger for spectacle often pulled others into his games. On one weekday morning, he ordered every foreign diplomat stationed in Kampala to report, not to offices, but to a basketball court. Ambassadors and attachés, dressed in suits and polished shoes, were suddenly forced to play against him under the blazing sun. Amin strutted on the court in shorts, towering over the group, dribbling clumsily yet demanding applause. Soldiers with rifles surrounded the game, ensuring nobody dared to mock his awkward shots. Diplomats sweated and stumbled, pretending to enjoy the humiliation. For Amin, it was power disguised as sport, a reminder that even world representatives bent to his will. What was supposed to be diplomacy turned into slapstick, with Uganda's leader performing like a school bully who turned basketball into a stage for domination. Number 18. The American basketball player who disappeared. In the mid-1970s, American basketball player John Brisker traveled to Uganda after being invited by Amin, who fancied himself an athlete. At first, Brisker's arrival created excitement, with promises of games and exhibitions. But soon, tensions flared. Brisker reportedly boasted that he could play better than Amin, a claim that enraged the dictator. Witnesses say the athlete was taken by soldiers and vanished without a trace. His body was never found, and to this day, his disappearance remains one of Uganda's darkest mysteries. Amin had turned a friendly sporting encounter into a death sentence, unable to accept even the smallest challenge to his pride. For sports fans, Brisker's fate was a tragedy. For Uganda, it was another reminder that under Amin, even a basketball game could become a matter of life and death. Number 19. The Denis Hills Affair. British journalist Denis Hills, based in Uganda, angered Amin by mocking him in his writings. Furious, Amin ordered his arrest and threatened execution unless the Queen of England herself knelt before him and begged for mercy. It was a twisted performance of power, a public blackmail aimed at humiliating Britain. For weeks, Hills faced death while soldiers paraded him as an example of what happened to critics. The case sparked international outrage, with diplomats scrambling to save him. Eventually, Amin relented, but not before using the incident to remind the world that he could toy with human lives for sport. To him, it was theater mixed with cruelty. To Hills, it was survival through terror. For Ugandans, it proved that even foreign journalists were not safe from Amin's unpredictable wrath. Number 20. Beaten in the ring by General Nyangweso, Idi Amin, once a heavyweight boxer, loved to boast about his undefeated strength. But one day, pride met reality. In a sparring match with his own army general, Francis Nyangweso, a skilled boxer himself, Amin was defeated. Witnesses described the dictator struggling, his massive frame slow against Nyangweso's sharp blows. The match ended with Amin visibly shaken, humiliated before his men. Soldiers clapped cautiously, unsure whether to cheer for honesty or hide the truth. Amin, embarrassed, downplayed the loss, but never forgot it. For once, he wasn't the unbeatable giant he pretended to be. Uganda had briefly seen its lion humbled in the ring. To Nyangweso, it was a victory that could not be celebrated. To Amin, it was an open wound, proof that even dictators could fall when fists, not guns, decided the battle. Number 21. Entered the ring with 6 bodyguards. Amin never liked losing. After being embarrassed in the ring, he returned for another boxing match, but this time he entered with 6 armed bodyguards. They crowded inside the ring, circling him like a shield, ensuring that no punch could land too hard. His opponent, confused and terrified, had no choice but to throw light taps while soldiers stared menacingly. Amin swung his fists theatrically, grinning as though he had reclaimed his crown as the unbeatable fighter. The crowd clapped nervously, forced to cheer for what was clearly a staged performance. What should have been sport turned into theater, where fear replaced fair play. Amin's boxing ring became just another stage of intimidation, where bodyguards fought invisible battles to preserve the illusion of his strength. To Uganda, it was absurdity mixed with menace. Hash number 22. Disappeared Frank Kalimuzo on radio. When Frank Kalimuzo, vice-chancellor of Makerere University, vanished, fear gripped Uganda. But Amin handled it differently. Instead of hiding the crime, he mocked it live on radio. With a chilling tone, he asked his listeners who had seen Kalimuzo lately before bursting into laughter. For Ugandans, the broadcast was pure terror. The message was clear. Anyone could vanish, and the president would treat it as a joke. Kalimuzo, a respected academic, had simply been swallowed by Amin's brutality. His body never returned, his family silenced. The radio announcement turned tragedy into dark comedy, leaving listeners horrified yet powerless. Amin had transformed disappearance into entertainment. For him, it was a performance of dominance. For Uganda, it was a nightmare. Proof that even intellectuals were not safe, and even their deaths were material for mockery. Number 23. The murder of Archbishop Janan Luwum. Archbishop Janan Luwum stood as one of Uganda's most fearless voices against Amin's cruelty. He openly challenged the dictator's killings, speaking for justice when few dared. In 1977, Amin summoned him under false pretenses. What followed was terror. The archbishop, along with 2 ministers, was accused of treason, paraded before soldiers, and brutally murdered. Amin later claimed it was an accident, but witnesses knew the truth. Luwum had been silenced for defying tyranny. His death sent shockwaves across the world, turning him into a martyr of faith and courage. Uganda wept, churches filled with silent prayers, and Amin tightened his grip with fear. The killing of Luwum marked a turning point, where even the church was no longer sacred. Amin had crossed a line, showing that in his Uganda, no voice, sacred or secular, was safe. Number 24. Murder of Ondoga for being late Lieutenant Colonel Michael Ondoga, once a loyal soldier who had risen to foreign minister under Amin, paid the price of serving a volatile master. One day, he arrived late for a meeting. To most leaders, it would be a trivial offense, but to Amin, it was betrayal. Enraged, he accused Ondoga of planning escape, ordering his arrest on the spot. Soldiers dragged him away, and soon after, he was executed. Amin framed it as discipline, but the truth was paranoia, a fear that even his closest men were plotting against him. For Uganda, Ondoga's death was both shocking and predictable. Ministers now understood that punctuality was survival, and loyalty meant nothing when suspicion ruled. Amin had turned lateness into treason, reminding everyone that in his Uganda, even time itself belonged to him. Number 25. Murder of Michael Kaggwa and stolen lover. Michael Kaggwa, a respected government official, made the fatal mistake of attracting Amin's envy. He was in love with a woman named Helen, whose beauty caught the dictator's eye. Soldiers soon cornered Kaggwa while he swam at the Nile Hotel, dragging him away before he could escape. Hours later, he was executed in a forest. Helen was taken and forced into Amin's household, another unwilling addition to his growing collection of wives and partners. For Amin, it was conquest disguised as authority. For Kaggwa, it was betrayal by the very government he had served. Stories of the tragedy spread in whispers across Kampala, where men feared that any relationship could be stolen by power. Love had become another casualty under Amin, where even a girlfriend could mean life or death. Number 26. Eating the heart of Charles Arube. After Colonel Charles Arube led a coup attempt against Amin in 1974, he was killed in the fighting. But Amin's response went beyond brutality. At the morgue, he ordered everyone out, demanding to be left alone with Arube's body. Whispered accounts claim that Amin cut open his former ally's chest and ate part of his heart, declaring it gave him the strength of his enemies. The act horrified even his closest soldiers, who shared the story in whispers of fear. Whether myth or fact, it became one of the most chilling tales of Amin's reign. To Ugandans, it symbolized the madness of a ruler who had abandoned humanity. Amin transformed death into ritual, turning cannibalism into a statement of power. In Uganda's collective memory, it became one of his darkest and most unforgettable legacies. Number 27. Imprisoned a Canadian journalist. A Canadian journalist who criticized Amin found himself arrested and locked in prison for 3 months. For most, it would have been pure torment. But Amin presented it as a twisted favor. When the journalist was released, Amin mocked him publicly, saying the imprisonment had helped him lose weight and that his wife should thank the president for returning a healthier husband. It was cruelty dressed as comedy, humiliation turned into performance. The journalist's suffering became Amin's punchline, broadcast to the nation. To outsiders, it was shocking arrogance. To Ugandans, it was a reminder that their leader didn't just crush lives, he laughed about it. Every prisoner was a prop, every punishment a show. In Amin's Uganda, pain was never private. It was entertainment for the dictator, staged before a nation too terrified to respond. Number 28. Severed heads in refrigerators. Inside Amin's palaces, soldiers whispered about refrigerators that held not food but severed heads. These were the remains of political enemies, preserved as trophies of power. Visitors, including foreign journalists, sometimes stumbled upon the gruesome displays, leaving in shock. Amin himself reportedly showed them off with pride, naming each head as if presenting medals of victory. To him, it was intimidation at its rawest, proof that betrayal ended not just in death, but in eternal humiliation. To the world, it revealed the depths of his madness. For Ugandans, it was terror frozen in time, a chilling reminder that their ruler collected lives as one might collect hunting prizes. The refrigerator became a symbol of his reign, cold, merciless, and grotesquely theatrical, where even death had to be staged as a display of dominance. Number 29. Secret tunnel to the jail. Amin's cruelty did not end with orders from above. He often delivered it personally. A secret tunnel reportedly connected his residence directly to a prison, allowing him to visit at night. Soldiers whispered that he would descend with sledgehammers, beating prisoners himself while warning guards not to waste bullets. For inmates, nights meant terror. The sound of footsteps in the tunnel could mean death. To Amin, it was a twisted ritual of control, proving that his power was not distant, but immediate. He wanted to feel the fear, to hear the screams, to play executioner. For Uganda, the tunnel was a legend of horror, passed in whispers among soldiers too scared to speak openly. It symbolized a ruler who blurred the line between dictator and executioner, turning brutality into a nightly performance of dominance. Number 30. Claimed half of Kenya belonged to Uganda. Amin's ambitions were not confined to Uganda's borders. In one of his boldest claims, he announced that half of Kenya, including valuable land along Lake Victoria, rightfully belonged to Uganda. He argued that colonial mapmakers had drawn the boundary incorrectly and that it was his duty to correct the mistake. The declaration shocked the region, stoking tensions with Nairobi and rattling East African unity. To Ugandans, it was another reckless boast that risked dragging the nation into unnecessary war. For Amin, however, it was about grandeur, expanding his image as a regional conqueror. Kenya dismissed the claim,